Too slow. Okay. Okay, so as the slide is loading, what I just like to say, in the third and the fourth day, or rather the fourth Sunday, we'll be looking at project management. Okay, in terms of the whole understanding of how do you come out with a devise a project. Rather, how do you write an entire proposal? How do you actually work out a whole frame, a framework, and that framework we all often call it as a logical framework. And then we'll be looking at the various processes that will be entailed in the uh, into the planning of the entire process. Okay, so when we're looking at a process, we will be looking at this, how this proposal gets developed, and then monitoring it. Okay, so I will be talking to you about a project cycle today. These are all the elements of that project cycle. And in the final class, we'll be looking at how do you evaluate it. Monitoring will be the previous Sunday, and evaluation. And in evaluation, we'll be looking at a participatory, with a very emphasis on participatory evaluation. Okay, so yeah. Are you able to see the screen now, the full screen?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now we shall go on to some of the deliverables that, as in, we will be needing to see as to see what exactly we'll be looking at. Sorry, this thing is jumping. Yeah, so one of the deliverables is the number of hours that we'll be looking at. Of course, this will consist of 4 lectures. Okay, so we are looking at 20 hours covered in this time. And then we will also look at uh, the aspect of doing a bit of homework. So I will be giving you the homework as in a certain amount of reading, maybe to watch a few documentaries. Okay, and this will lend an ability for you to add value to your knowledge that I'll be sharing. Now, what I'll be sharing is limited to a perspective that I'm bringing according to the syllabus. But as you read certain very key articles, you'll be able to also uh, add a lot of perspective and knowledge to the whole process. Okay, so as this is happening, it's loading again. I'm not sure what has happened. Okay, so with the direct teaching, as I was telling you, I will be sharing 3 articles. Okay, which will be provided by me, and of course, at the end there will be a 50-mark term end examination with an assignment of 30 marks, and of course class participation of 20 marks. Okay, I shall share with you the assignment in the course of this week, so that you can already start thinking about it and planning for it. Uh, then we shall be looking at now. I'll just take you straight away because we've covered a lot of time in our introductions and getting to know the course. So straight away, I shall take you straight to today's sessions. As I can see, sorry, I made a mistake here. So it is the 5 sessions that we will be covering today will be the first one is the introduction, of course, and we are looking at the deliverables. The second session we are looking at is project management. What is a project? And we'll be looking at the project cycle and the overview of and the qualifications of a project. The next session will be on approaches, and then following with key domains and project lifecycle. Now, in all this, I hope that the entire session of today, you will get a clarity as to how do we perceive a project in terms of the corporate sector, or rather as understood in business circles. Now, why am I drawing this picture before you? I would like to first lay this out before you so that having this perspective, it will lend an understanding to a, a basis on which we can then connect to the social work field and see how project is actually worked out in a social work field. Okay. Um, yeah. So let's start with an understanding of the various sectors. So suppose if I look at the various sectors, you can see on the screen here. Um, what are some of the social work sectors that we are familiar with? Okay, if we say that we are working in a particular, I use this word as I asked you to also introduce yourself. What are the various sectors that we are looking at?
Health,
Healthcare.
education.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I think
Education.
majorly health. Okay, so if I put it down as health, then you have
Education.
education. Yeah,
Education.
then
Livelihood. Livelihood.
uh, yes, okay. Uh, I think I will do another thing is I think I'm getting working through the PowerPoint is a little slower. I'll try to work through another form. Are you familiar with mind maps? I think all of us are familiar with mind maps also. I'll try
Not
to
me, sir.
draw, yeah. So I'll just try to draw up a mind map so that way we can work better. You know, because using I'm very much of a teacher in the class, you know, so like I use the board a lot, and so I'm a little, so let's look. Excuse me for the slow functioning of my laptop. Okay, I think we'll just leave technology out for the moment. We'll just go ahead with what we are looking at. Um, let's look at these various sectors. As we said, one of the sectors is health, okay? Education, livelihood, if you can look at livelihood. What are the other sectors that we can also look at from your experience? I
Gender.
think, sorry?
Gender.
Gender. Oh, yeah, gender of women. Okay, so okay, we can look at women as important. Actually, it's more kind of an issue. Yeah, so yeah, we can look at it from that point of view. Women, children, education, livelihood.
Waste
These are the various.
management.
Sorry.
Waste management.
Yes, waste management that came in one, and also when Alman shared is disaster. Okay, So you have disaster management. So with in waste you also have environment, and I think I'll just put off my video maybe because that is causing the little bit of a drag on the. Just a minute. Maybe my laptop is not supporting this because, yeah, I think it is making a lot of difference. Okay, I think that's good enough. Yeah, now it's good. I think the camera was causing it a lot. Okay. Okay, so we look at these various sectors, and I would like to just ask you that in a sector, when we're looking at a particular sector, okay, we've worked with different kinds of working at addressing these issues in these sectors. Okay, now in the social work field, if you come from the corporate sector, you will notice that there is always projects that they look at. Okay, they look at any kind of task in terms of a project. Okay, so they take up a project and they complete a project. As in this in the corporate sector or in the business sector, we are looking at certain assignments. Okay, so when I use the word project, what do I mean when I say project? Okay, what is a project? If I just ask you a very simple term, like when you say project means what? What do you understand from the term project? Anyone?
Yeah. Is it, sir, am I audible?
Yes, yes, please go ahead.
Yeah. Project may be called as set of activities laid down to achieve our goal.
Okay, so a set of activities. Okay, so we can look at what are those. We can then go on to say what are those activities. Yeah, a set of activities to achieve your goal. Okay. Uh, yeah. So this is one way of looking at a project. Means there is a set of defined activities. Uh, are there any other elements to a project, or rather, when you say a project, you're looking at what else? What are the other adjectives? Okay, let me put it very simply. What are the adjectives that you will use to describe a project? One thing would be definitely a set of activities. Okay, you're looking at a set of activities. What else?
It's a document which defines the rationale for
Okay.
doing a project.
Okay, a document that kind of encapsulates or that document that expresses the entire uh, process, or along with, as I'm taking your word, the rationale. Okay. So it's a document, as you said, and if I may pick up the keywords in what you have just shared, it's a document, okay? But along with it, that document highlights a certain process, okay, with a rationale, okay? Any other things that comes to your mind when you think of a project?
It's a document which says what is the kind of finance required for
Okay,
doing all the process activities, everything.
yes.
Budget.
There is a certain amount of finance. Um, yes.
Risk assessment, impact assessment, the project will entail what the project is about, what are the resources it will require,
Yes.
where the risks involved in it, etc.
Yes. So I think we are coming to a lot more as you're beginning to reflect. I think you're putting more and more points on the table. I think you can see my document. which I have sharing with you. I think this is also very important. You have rightly said, some 2-3 of you are coming from the finance sector, so are able to say that whenever any project is undertaken, there is finances involved in it. Okay, finance is a very important thing. Risk, yes, certain amount of risk. We need to calculate that risk. So so we are looking at finances required for the project. You're looking at risk that are calculated, um, uh, for the carrying out of the project. Okay. Then you said an important thing about resources. I think this is a very, very important point. So when you're looking at resources, what are you looking at basically? Hello. Yeah. Any resources, when you're looking at resources in a project, what are you looking at?
Primarily human resource.
Very good. Yes, there is human and
Money,
yes,
time,
yes,
and
money,
expertise.
time, expertise. Okay. And of course, we also said earlier, I'll put that here and I'll say that along with it also the finance required for the project. Okay. With this, there is also one important aspect which I think maybe when you're looking at the manufacturing sector, and you're looking at what? You're looking at material resources. Okay. Whenever you're looking at any project that you undertake, you're looking at the human resources, of course, definitely, people, materials, okay, money, time, expertise, finance. Okay. My God, where did it go? Yeah. Yeah. So yeah. Then any other aspects do you think we need to look at?
Yeah, it talks about the set indicators and outcomes.
Very good. So you're looking at um, indicators and outcomes. I think some of you have been working on. I'm not sorry, I can't recognize your voices right now. But can you tell me who said that?
I'm
Yeah.
Kushala.
Kushala, that's a very important point. Indicators and outcome is a very important aspect as you put the entire document into process. Okay, so indicators and outcomes, as you can see, is a very important aspect of the document that you will be arriving at in terms of this document that you will be coming out with. Yeah. Yeah. Can you give me a term that you can use for this document? When you say a document that entirely expresses or captures or encapsulates the entire process. Okay, what is this
Project
document called?
proposal.
What is this
Is it a
document called?
project proposal?
Very good. So you're looking at a document that is commonly understood as a proposal. Okay, now proposal is like a master plan. Okay, a proposal is something that any project that you will be handling in the future, even if you're working for the corporate sector, you decide to work for the corporate sector and you want to specifically work for CSR, you will need to look at that any project. Before you start a project, you will say, where is the project proposal? What is the project proposal? Can I have a look at that project proposal? Why? Because that project proposal, captures the entire process. Okay, so that is there. Risk, resources. Um, what else do you think comes into this whole process? Yes, anybody?
Beneficiary type.
Yeah, yes. For whom is this? Uh, who is this catering to? Or rather, yeah, who is the benefit? Okay, I like the word that you use the term beneficiary. I'm for the social sector, so I definitely will be using the word beneficiary. or we would be calling it in the corporate sector, or in normal term parlance, we also call it the stakeholders. Okay, who are the stakeholders in the entire project? So the stakeholders, one of the most important is those who are your clients. In business terms, we call it the clients, or in social work terms, we call it the beneficiaries. Okay, so you have the stakeholders. One of the important stakeholders that you will have is the clients. You would also call them the customer. Another commonly used term is who is your client or who is your customer. Okay, please understand, I am also trying to capture this whole thing as a corporate project. Okay, I will be also looking at it as later on as a social work project or the social sector project or whatever. Okay, a social project. But when you're looking at a project, basically the dimensions of it or the elements of it or the basic understanding of it is common to all, you know. And there's a lot that we can learn through management, and therefore the whole this whole perspective needs to be built up by all of us. Okay, let's see. Now, are there any other aspects that we think we need to add to this entire understanding of a project? So you have
I think location where we propose to do the project.
Okay, yeah, okay. So we have a location. Okay, the a location, the activities would definitely have a location. Yeah, location. That means you are covering a particular geographical,
Exactly.
yeah, a particular geographical area. Again, my computer has gone into a loop. Okay, so there is geography and where exactly is it going to be located? Rather, when you're looking at, you know, production, uh, it's important to know where you are going to set up your entire manufacturing unit, or where you're going to provide the services. Now you notice I am looking at, I'm using another term called here product or services. Okay. Okay, so when we're looking at a project, we are aiming to provide a particular, our whole goal, okay, is to provide maybe a product or a service to the target group, okay, or to the stakeholder. We use it. So one thing is, I'm using also some terminology from the social work sector, so that you can immediately understand what I'm speaking of. So now coming back to this, so we are looking at a project that needs to address something. I'm trying to make it simple for you to put it across. You said a project achieves one's goal. So basically, what are you looking at? You are looking at a project that has certain products or services that you intend to provide. Okay. Am I making sense? Let me see. Maybe I'm talking a lot of theory. Let's put it down to a little practical aspect. So suppose if I look at some of the projects that you are familiar with. Okay, let's take the very contextual projects in various sectors. I started off my class speaking about sectors. Okay, so like you said, health sector. Okay, let me put that down so that we will take in certain key sectors that we can look at. Okay, so you said the health sector, then you said certain sectors like
Education.
yeah,
Education,
education,
livelihood,
livelihood, and
environment.
environment. Okay, okay. I think these are, since we are just 8 of us, 9 of us in the class. Let's take, say, if I divide you up into two of you, and I quickly ask you to form a buzz group, and where you can discuss with your partner, probably over WhatsApp or maybe so if I say, if I give you a small little task, okay, and I say that, can you come up, can you devise a project for any one of these sectors? Okay, so suppose now let me go back to my teams and see who's there in the class. Anybody has joined us? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we have 6 of you. So maybe I can take, just in order that it will be difficult to divide you into groups. So suppose we take 2 more sectors. Okay, so we take disaster and give me another sector. There's livelihood. There is, I'm just looking at your list. Okay, Sakshi's from journalism. So we could look at something like communication. We can look at.
Can we look at sports?
Sorry, I didn't get you.
Can we look at sports?
Okay, yeah, that's interesting. Let me look at sports. Okay, very good. So we have 6 sectors. Each one of you take up one sector. So if you can just tell me your name, and I'll just ask you to quickly be very contextual, so that each of us actually does a practice kind of a thing. So health, anybody would like to take up health? I'll just write your name across it. So then I'll call your name when we are trying to discuss some things. Yeah. So suppose if we say health, who would like to take up health in the group? I think there are 2, 3 of you. So anyone can volunteer.
I'll take up.
Yeah, your
Priyanka.
name. Yeah, Priyanka. Okay, I'll put Priyanka for health. And then,
Sir, I'll take livelihood, Kushala.
okay, Kushala will take livelihood.
Indumati education.
Okay. Indumati can take up
Tanvi
education.
health.
Okay, Tanvi can take up health. Yeah.
Almin disaster.
Yes, I was just thinking of that only, Almin. So disaster, that's good enough. Yeah. And
Sir, I had already taken health. Priyanka here.
yeah, I'm
Tanvi.
aware of it. Now I think 1, 2, 3,
Okay.
4, 5, 6th person is in the group. Am I missing something?
Sakshi.
Ah, yes, Sakshi. Yeah. Sakshi, you would like to take up something? Or anything that sports? No, I think
Yes.
somebody wanted to take up. I think okay. So I'll put you down for sports, Sakshi. Now see, yeah. Sorry. Yeah, your voice was breaking. Anyway, maybe it's my internet. Okay, now these are the 6 sectors. Okay, now suppose I would like you to think up a kind of a project that you would undertake. Now you could think of it in a very professional way. Okay, now you are given a target, or rather you are told by your line manager or your CEO that you have to develop, we are going to get funds to develop a project. Okay, so, or rather the company is putting funds. You are a corporate company, say the company through their CSR is putting in funds for a project. Okay, so I would like you to quickly draw up a project overview. Let me put it down on your screen, so just you get the term correct. Develop a project overview. Okay, so a project overview, I'm using a very typical business terminology. I'm purposely using this because you are all from the corporates. You will be working in CSR in corporate. So I'm using terminology that is very familiar with the corporate sector. You're looking at a project overview. Okay, you need to look at a project and you need to write down the entire, in a nutshell, just to tell you in short, what is a project overview? A project overview is it's a document. Okay, so we spoke about it here earlier. It's a document which is a 1-pager. Okay, in 1 page. So in a project overview, you will talk about your project. you put down the elements. Now I brainstormed a little bit with you and I purposely left a few things out because I would like you to explore that and see what could come into a one-page document of a project overview on the topic of as mentioned here. So if I may put it down, make a project overview of, or rather, yeah, project overview of the topic selected by you. Well, actually make a project overview. Okay, so put it down and then we will look at where is it that probably the gaps, there are gaps, but I will point it out to you once each one of us struggles to actually try to put it down, and then automatically as you're putting it down you will realize. Now if you ask me now what do I do in that, suppose if it is give you an example of health. Okay, now what do I write in, now what is the project about? You will need to visualize that project as to what should be the goal, what are the other elements that you will keep in mind, and you will actually plan and let it be concrete. Like suppose if you say you look at a project of providing vaccination for maybe you know a set number of say vaccination in the next whatever, you make a goal out of it. Then you will talk about the processes and put down all these things that we just discussed. And what will you plan for all that? So you, in that overview, you will actually put it down. Okay, so put it down. Don't worry about making mistakes because that will help us to learn exactly what are we looking at in a project. Okay, I'm giving you maybe it's 11:08 to be precise according to the computer clock. So maybe I'll give you 10 minutes. So I'll come back at 11:20. Okay, it's 11:10. You come back at 11:20. Put it down quickly. If you have a paper and pen or if you have your laptop with you, just put down these things. And if you want to, you could even share that document. And then we will talk about what we need to look at when we are looking at project. And then I'll take you to the entire understanding of project management. Yeah, a short exercise that will put into perspective. Yeah, are you all okay with it? Yes, clear? Hello,
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
can I get a yes on it?
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Okay,
sir.
yeah, okay, fine, fine. Yeah, so quickly if we can do that. We'll be back at 11:20, giving you 10 minutes. So take a break also. That will be a good time for you to walk around. Hello, so we are back again. I do hope you are back here. Hello. Are you there in
Yes,
the
sir.
class? Yeah, wonderful, wonderful. Thank you, Priyanka, for responding. I
Yes,
think
sir.
the others also, Kushala, Indumati, Sakshi, Tanvi,
Yes, sir.
and Almin. I think you are all in the class. So I think we are a small class, so we'll definitely, the learning will be much more. Okay, so coming back to what I had given you a small little work to do. So write down a project overview on the sector that we are working in, or rather we have identified. You could come up with your own kind of an overview. Anybody would like to share that? Hello? Anybody would like to share their project overview with me? Let me see.
Sir, I can take an attempt, but since this is the
Yes.
first time I'm writing
Yes,
it,
go ahead,
then of course.
Sakshi.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
this
yeah.
is on a project which was done by my previous company. So I'm just gonna just outline the objective, which is to my mind to
Mhm.
invest rupees 10 crores to uplift the Paralympic sports in the country, thereby empowering the physically challenged by investing in their training so that they can participate in global championships.
Okay, so you have a sports project. Okay. Um, so you have basically given a goal statement for your project, right?
Right.
So come again. You said you have a kind of for the Para Olympics, is it? If I got it right?
So basically, to invest in the training of physically challenged, so that they are enabled to participate in global platforms, thereby empowering them.
Okay, so they can participate on global platforms. Okay, that's great. I think what you have rightly indicated in your this thing is a goal statement. Okay, a goal statement, or in other words, that you have used is your objective of your project. Anything else you have included in your project overview?
So I've included the money to be spent and who will be the stakeholders. The stakeholders will be the NGOs identified who work with these people with the physically challenged who wish to participate and who want to be trained, and the corporate itself. Because not just that it's a mandated by them to spend that much money, but also because they want to sports is one of the fields where they want to invest in. So therefore, the corporates, the NGO, and the people involved, the physically challenged people. So three stakeholders.
You have mentioned the major stakeholders, yes, and the finances required. Okay, I think yeah. Okay, let's hold on to your overview. Let's take another overview at the moment. Anybody who has would like to share? Probably if you have incorporated the same thing, or if you have another dimension that you have added to the whole process of your overview, project overview.
Can I, sir?
Let me share my screen also. 1 minute. Who's this?
Kushala.
Kushala. Yeah, yeah. Please go ahead, Kushala.
Though I have not written the entire, 1 second, sir, entire document, but I have written the headlines so I can share it with you. That
Yeah,
can you hear
yeah.
me,
Head.
sir?
Okay. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
so you are
Actually,
taking. Yeah. On livelihood.
livelihood.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm proposing a livelihood. I've just written whatever I have written. I'll read and then I'll read the heading what I have written. Okay.
Okay.
Palghar is a district having maximum rainfall. Still have no water to survive post monsoon due to its geographical condition. The villagers are forced to migrate after monsoon in search of optional livelihood in the neighboring state along with the family. Due to migration, the children are deprived of the services rendered by ICDs, hence the life parameter deteriorates, leading to mortality. Provision for additional livelihood may encourage farmers to stay back in the village, thus helping the family, as well as reduction on migration, which is a major concern for the bigger cities. It's proposed to design a training program for the farmers, along with making provision of other logistics in order to create additional income in the hands of farmers. This is the background I wrote. After that, the objective of the project, though it has come in the background, I put it separately, saying create additional income for the farmers, minimize migration, improvement in the health of children. After that, I was supposed to take up duration of the program, activities, implementation approach, and expected outcome and indicators, budget required, monitoring approach, timeline of the activities, and just now after this lecture I added one more point, that is risk mitigation. Under risk mitigation, what I am anticipating, if the government undertakes the similar program for the farmers, then probably I may have to look for some other thing. That is what I am counting under risk mitigation. Thank you.
Yeah, I think Kushala has added a new dimension to this whole thing. Is the whole question that in any project, when we are designing, we need to give a little context. You need to give, you need to say, why did you arrive at that particular project? So what is another word that we use we give a context, or we give a background, and
Rationale.
yeah, you can use the word rational. Okay, you could also use another important aspect is, anybody else, is the whole understanding of
Purpose. No, acha, problems.
yeah, problem identification. Okay, you begin to understand what is the problem that you seek to address. And let me tell you, in corporate also, if you're looking at even corporates, every corporate business is set up. Why? Because they would like to deliver a product or a service. You remember? Okay. You are looking at a product or a service. Similarly, in the social work sector, you are looking at something that you intend to serve or you intend to address. Okay. So I like the word that you used. You mentioned that you propose to design. As you were talking, I actually wrote down the word that you propose to design whatever. So what you're looking at is basically you're looking at a solution. Okay, so what is the solution that you're looking at? What is the solution that you're looking at is something that you would need to say. So if you say that the problem is that farmers deteriorating conditions of livelihood, okay, or if you're saying another condition is like, say, COVID. In COVID times, the increasing numbers of COVID patients and inaccessibility to a cure. And later on, when the cure came, there was inaccessibility to the vaccines. So what was the design solution proposed? That they were looking at manufacturing the vaccines. Okay, so they were looking at a solution. So Puna Adarwala, whatever his name is, Adarwala, so he came up with setting up a plant that would produce vaccines. Okay, so the corporates had identified a business opportunity. So there was a problem, there is a business opportunity. Okay, the solution is basically a business opportunity. Okay, for us as social workers, we would look at how to address the issue. Okay, so we are proposing something to design and to address the issue. Okay, I think you can see my screen so you can follow what I'm talking about. So you're looking at an issue, you're looking at how to address. Now, if that can come up very clearly, in a nutshell, you have won the anybody looking at that project overview, whether it is your manager or it is somebody who's willing to invest in your company. will immediately be able to get the crux of the situation. Okay. Now coming back to, I also say that you have mentioned your objectives, like Sakshi mentioned, her objectives was in sports was to, she had a goal statement. Okay, the goal statement comes up very clearly and saying what do you propose to do and how will you, I mean the objective. Okay, the objective that you're looking at, actually you are looking at expected outcomes is something that what you mentioned. So your expected outcomes will be along a fleshing out of your objective. So suppose if you have said you wanted additional income for farmers, so what is your expected outcome? If I may ask you, yeah, Kushala, what would be your expected outcome for your objective of additional income for farmers?
Maybe in the first year, I would say some 30% increase in income in the hands of farmers.
Yeah, so
Maybe in
you're
the
looking,
first year.
yes, yes. Yeah, so maybe, yeah, 30% income, that is also a very good margin you're looking at. Sometimes it could be even sometimes in the first year, if you're looking at it would be the entire, setting up of the whole process, like say, if it is their fields and the trainings that they are trained, they have done the setting up of the fields. Okay, in terms of organic manure, what you are doing is you are setting the field for the next 10 years, so that when you're going to look at outcomes, you will be looking at a systematic outcome. So in the first year, as you said, 30%, okay, fairly modest. I mean, if you can look at 30%, so you're saying 30% increase in incomes, right?
Yeah. I always keep low so that I can show overachievement.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, 30% income. So your expected outcomes would be part of the whole process of objectives. And later on in this course, when in the third session, I'll be talking to you about how do you work on a framework for this. Okay, it's called a logical framework, and how do you put. So I think all these things, since some of you may have worked in this, you will understand this terminology. Then there is the whole aspect of duration. I like what you mentioned, the duration. See, when a funder looks at your project, or when you are presenting it to your boss, the CEO, he will say, how much time do you need for your project? Very clear estimates. I need a year, I need 3 years, I need 6 years to make this happen. Okay, time is a very important aspect of any project overview. Okay, yeah, activities, yeah, activities, even I think yeah, let's listen to some others before I yeah, anybody else would like to go in now? I think we've had two of you. Yeah, what about the others, like say Priyanka or Tanvi?
Yes, sir. My topic was health, so I have jotted down some basic points.
Mhm.
About health, I have chosen the area where the objective or a goal line is like reduce the children mortality rate due to communicable disease spread during the monsoon in Mumbai suburban slum areas. So this is what I'm looking at the target group. So
Mhm.
then, so this is basically a children are our main target group who are, getting infected during the monsoon season with the different communicable diseases like malaria, typhoid, jaundice. Even you can take it as a COVID. So, so this project will basically work upon this issue. So how we will do it? So that is the work would happen in two aspects, two levels. One is the prevention and one is the cure. So basically, prevention part is about making awareness with the community, children, health workers, doing surveys about what are the facilities are available in the community, what kind of facility needs to be there to avoid such a circumstances to arise. Then how the sanitization can take place by incorporating Swachh Bharat Abhiyan and usages of toilets and providing the clean water supply to the community people. And the third part would be the vaccination on the communicable diseases. If there are children who needs vaccination to prevent such diseases, so that would be the prevention part would cover. Then the cure part, yes, after doing all the prevention setup, there will be a children who would be falling sick. So that needs to be treated in early stages. So early detection of the disease, timely treatment at the PHC or local government hospital if needed in private hospital, and arranging the finances if required through the donors or the CSR project where the company is working upon. Basically, the stakeholders would be the community people, hospitals, health workers, Anganwadi workers, government, NGO, and the donors. So this is what I could jot down in whatever the 10 minutes I had.
Okay, okay, very good. Yeah. So, yeah, so that's nice what you mentioned, the stakeholders, and you mentioned a little detail on the activities. I think that's very interesting what you brought out here, the whole question of the process. Okay, so when you were talking about you had a particular, if I will put it down, I'm using a new term now, a strategy. Okay, so I think whenever you are addressing a particular issue, so when you're proposing a solution, you're looking at a strategy. You know what's a strategy?
How we can do it,
Yeah,
planning.
yeah. It's a plan, yes, but importantly, it is your methodology or the how part of it, as you just rightly mentioned, the how part of it. So whenever you're writing a proposal or writing a overview, a project overview, or you're looking at a proposal, one of the important things that they will always look at is what is the strategy that you are looking at. Okay, so you have mentioned a very important thing is the strategy is prevention and cure. And then you went on to enumerate the processes involved in addressing the issue. Okay, so I think that is very important because the process involved is something everybody would like to know. Like in the corporate sector, we would say, uh, what would be the step-by-step approach to deliver? Okay, what are the deliverables? Okay, in terms of how would you go about the process. Okay, I will talk to you a little bit more about the processes because this is interesting. I like what you covered: awareness survey, facilities. So in any project, you're looking at a kind of either in sequence or in overlapping or whatever it is, but there is a clarity on the whole process. Okay, early detection and timely response, yes. Yeah, so anybody else is there for the next part of it? Okay, um, anybody else? That means
Yes,
there is left, yeah, Indumati is left and Tanvi. No, yeah,
sir, I would take a shot.
yeah,
I chose education.
yes, yes.
Okay. So in that, like, I'm following two sustainable goals there, gender equality and also quality education there. And
Hmm.
in that, basically, I am focusing only on slums in Bangalore. In some slums in Bangalore, especially, I am focusing on SC community there. And in the SC community, I am again specifically focused on girls' children. And in girl children, I wanted to take from the age of 5 to 10 in the beginning because my project will go till 5 years. So I'm taking first, like, so it could be age first standard to fifth standard children I'm taking the beginning of my
Hmm.
project. And why? Because in a sense, like after fifth standard with the same children, I'm gonna go with next 5 years. It could be like,
Hmm.
the project I'm planning with. If the project goes well, then next 5 years with the same children, it could be like till they go for a 10th standard and 12th standard, like higher education, like that I'm planning with. And my stakeholders would be like children itself and mothers and school teachers, education department and local leaders, because local leaders are the one who knows more about the community. And also I wanted to know who are the NGOs who already working in the community, so that if I could collaborate anything with them, like other than what activities I'll be doing. So my process would be, I'll be like my project would be like process would go like this, like building a rapport with local leaders and school teachers, and also visiting the government schools near the slum to understand what teaching methodology they are using, and understanding the dropouts among the girl children. Also, like whether any child marriage are happening, or and also helping them to introducing by TLMs, like teaching learning methodology, or STEM learning, like science, technology, engineering, maths, and offering like computers to the teachers, and also teaching them like digital literacy also could happen, and financial literacy for mothers, and career guidance, or any other scholarship offered by the government, especially for that SC community people. So this is what I focus on, and what outcome I would expect from my project would be like the dropouts would be reduced, and also the teachers get a knowledge of new methodology, and the community itself, they get to know the importance of education, and they won't bring their child for a, like child labor won't happen, or early marriage won't happen. So these are the things I have covered.
Okay, very good. Yeah, so I think interesting again, because you have added some more dimensions to the whole process. Besides the fact of stakeholders, outcomes, what I see is here you are looking at again an approach to the whole process of the project, and you're looking at a sequential aspect. Again, here I can see there is a as you have put it, sequential or incremental, as they say. Another thing is that you're looking at a progression. Okay, you're looking at a progression in your project accordingly, so that there is a kind of a build up. So you're taking your project from one phase to another. I will just put it in brackets so I don't miss this point. So from one phase to another phase. See, this is interesting because whenever you're looking at a project, the stakeholders, especially the funders or those who are the owners of the company, would like to look at how would your project, be carried on. And I think that aspect came in. Then there is another interesting aspect which I picked up from your sharing, is that the fact that when you were talking about stakeholders, you were looking at an element, I'm putting down again in bracket, the sustainability aspect. That means involving the stakeholders for sustainability. I think that's a nice point that you spoke about, though you did not use the word. So whenever you're looking at a project overview, you need to look at how sustainable will be your project. You need to weave in this aspect into your project, because the person who's reading it should understand immediately, this project will actually be sustainable. So this is interesting. Okay. Yeah, so very quickly for the remaining two, I think. No, I think, yeah. If the others want to share, Tanvi and Alvin. Alvin.
Yes, I have not, noted down full things because I don't have enough resources. But
Okay.
yeah, I can share the
Short,
outline
share.
with you.
Yes.
Yeah. So the overview of the project is, we would like to work on the disaster management, mainly linked to the natural one. So, the prevention and for the like things like the earthquake, the floods, and would like to work upon this type of thing. So yeah, so the prevention mainly links to the flood is availability of basic things they should be avail and the important documents, the certain things that people should be kept, and then they should be able to know the safe haven into the community. So linking the community, mapping them, and then marking the safe haven by the GIS is the main thing. And then in the disaster management and the earthquake is how do you we prepare yourself and what should you do and do's and don'ts during the earthquake. So yeah, and then the set of activities are basically these are the soft skill. I mean this are being given by training them with this trainings, giving them first aid responder. They are creating first aid responder, training certain volunteers in the community so that they can respond to the disaster as a first responder in the community and things like this. Yeah, and the rationale is, more or less, we see that we in a lot of there are instances into our countries, and then we've been facing now and then the natural disasters like a flood and sometimes earthquake. Quite long time we haven't received now, but then still we should educate the community what are the things which are handy for us to do. Yeah. And in terms of finances, there is not much of finance needed, but only the training is been needed, and sometimes you need to have certain things that are available at your safe haven so that people could evacuate and then they could be kept there. Yeah.
Okay, so I think fairly important points also. You have spoken about the rationale in terms of country-facing disaster, documents to be kept safe. Yeah. So here again, you are looking at some of the processes again, if I may put it down. You're looking at certain processes in terms of creating a safe haven for people, uh, for safety of people and their possessions. Okay, so that is there. How to prepare oneself is interesting because I think this is what you're looking at in terms of sphere standards. For those in the group, I think Alvin has used a very interesting, Almin has used a very interesting terminology called sphere standards. Almin, you have been through some disaster trainings yourself?
Yes, I have gone through community emergency response training and first aid training.
Okay, very good. Community disaster response, just to
Community emergency
emergency,
response training.
yeah, response training, community. Yes, yes, yes. There are many organizations that conduct this. Is like Sphere India, and you have also
Yes, we are India. And
yeah.
then we also do high level training, which is the other the organization when I worked before is SART training, search and rescue training, which has been provided by Radar India. And
Yes,
then
yes,
we
yes.
have we have people coming from UK to train us in the volunteers in India. So this training is basically whenever there is a natural disaster. So there is a team who assess the site and what is the damage and everything, and then there is a standalone team who will do a rescue of this all
Yeah.
casualty or maybe
Yes, yes.
try to do something. Yeah.
Yes, I mean, that is, I think, a very interesting part because, these trainings are very important. And I think you spoke on a very important dimension of the process. And the important dimension of the process is trainings, or rather, one of the activities is training. When you're looking at processes, you're looking at trainings, training of the community and, equipping them. Somebody else spoke earlier on awareness. So one of the things that somebody had spoken of, I remember very clearly, was the whole understanding of awareness. Okay, so I think that also came out in somebody else's sharing. So awareness is one of the processes involved here. I remember here. Okay, so this was in health. Somebody, I think she had spoken. Was that, I think Priyanka, I think, has spoken, or Tanvi, I
Yes,
think.
sir.
Yes, sir. So
Priyanka.
Priyanka, yeah, Priyanka, you have spoken about awareness. So when you're looking at processes, you're looking at the stakeholder involvement at various junctures, or rather various steps. So you're looking at a very interesting process. So awareness trainings, okay, and after trainings would be their own whatever outcomes that you're looking at, and then in another step would be that after they become empowered, then they become service providers to the community. Okay, so I'm not going into too much of technicalities, because that is something that you will have to weave into the project, because when you're looking at a project, you will need to weave in all these aspects. Finance, of course, as you rightly said, finance is required. We are not going too much into it, but it's important to understand that there is a finance element. I think we have covered everyone now.
Yeah.
um,
And I think, sir, only the risk part in this is,
yeah.
mainly in India, because we are a developed nation, developing nation now. So most of the time, the Indian government intervene whenever there is a major disaster like flooding or something like this. So
Yes.
they involve army or air force,
Yes.
things like this.
That is the
So
NDMA.
so we
It's
don't
a
we don't get much, yeah, we don't get much chance to deploy ourselves, but then we have government who is doing a good job.
Yes, yes, yes. The first service provider of disaster, this is just for your knowledge, is supposed to be the government and the army that first steps into any disaster. Okay, so you have the NDMA, that is a National Disaster Management Authority, and you have the state
Yes.
SDMA, Disaster Management Authority. Now, it happens to be that I have not worked. I mean, I have worked, but I have actually been part of an organization that had one of its main components as disaster. I was working with Caritas India, a major funding agency. Being the zonal manager there, I was in touch with a lot of disasters that took place in the country, right from Orissa to actually a lot of things. So that's how I know a little bit more of disaster. But there are lots of analysis, just for your own reading. Almin, you can go in through a lot of things that, as you mentioned, that emergency response, disaster, then there is all kinds of different strategies, of disaster response. Okay, now they have gone into, all different ways in which communities can be react. Anyway, so that is not a class on disaster. So we'll
Sir,
get
I
back to
have
the whole processes
one.
of.
Excuse me, sir. I have an out of context question.
Yeah, yeah, please go ahead. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
please.
if I receive a CSR fund for a disaster, suppose,
Yes, yes. Tushar.
I have heard that I have heard that in case of any disaster, a state
Mhm.
or center government declares it as a disaster. That particular event, for example, if there is flood,
Yes, yes.
unless the state or central government declares that it is a disaster, the money spent on that particular help is not called as money spent toward disaster. Is that true?
Yeah, how you account for that is something that the rules have been changing, Kushala, because
Mm.
see, there has been a great amount of change with the current government's approach towards the non-profit, or rather towards the NGO sector,
Mm.
with the FCRA rules being changed drastically. Okay, we had the FCRA rules that came in earlier in 2010, if I'm not mistaken, and then 12 with amendments 2013. But then with now the recent changes in FCRA, so the money that comes in for disaster very often from foreign donors is under scrutiny, because the government has changed a lot of its rules, with regard to FCRA, and its application and all those kinds of things. So that is a little bit of a difficult. You're right in one way, because you know you you can intervene, but how you account for it is something that you will have to get back to your finance manager or an expert on that, on how do you account for your processes. So I know one thing for sure, that if the money is come for a particular reason, it has to be spent for that as per the project, because that money finance comes in for a project of that particular nature and has to be accounted for that. So if it has got the approval, then I think you can go ahead with the spending of it. Okay. That is how I view it now, but I can also check out what is the recent changes with regard to this. Okay, but that's much I know for sure. Yeah, Kushala? Yeah.
Thank you,
But
sir.
it's a very interesting area. I mean, finances, about how things have been changing in the last few years about finances and the spending for the NGO sector. Yeah. So coming back to what I was discussing with you, so we have looked at various sections. We have looked at various projects in terms of sports, livelihood, and I think we have come out with some interesting parts of the aspect of a project overview. Okay, so we have looked at you know all these different projects that you have spoken about: health, education, disaster management. Okay, so in all this, have I missed out somebody? There were two people to speak on health. Anybody else is left to speak? Or we shall?
Tanvi, sir.
Yes, Tanvi, please, if you have something to share.
So already everyone has covered, but I thinking about healthcare in tribal area.
Okay.
So
Okay.
though we are in developing nation, but we haven't reached in tribal area for a basic healthcare. So I'll start project in tribal area for 2 3 years, and will share awareness about the basic healthcare and basic hygiene. So we'll distribute the some hygiene product to tribal area people, and we identify the translator because language can be a barrier with to work with the tribal area. So we'll identify translator and some social worker, and we will provide healthcare to child and adult.
Okay.
And also I request government to start any basic healthcare center within the tribal area, so that they can facilitate the medical care within the area. They don't have to come out in urban center.
Okay, so this is an interesting thing that you have shared, Tanvi. Thank you. So you have shared about the tribal area, and you have mentioned about important aspect is who will be part of your implementation. I think you have mentioned some very interesting points of translators and social workers. Okay, so this is a very important aspect, I think, covered by some, I think I have covered. Okay, this is a very important part that you have mentioned, that who will be your human resource. So who is going to be your human resources in order to actually roll out your project or implement your project. Okay, so that's interesting. So the human resources is a very important aspect that you have focused on. Thank you, Tanvi. So with this, I think all of us would have come out with some kind of a project overview. Now, why am I calling it a project overview? As I mentioned it earlier to you, a project overview is something that gives you a deeper, it gives you a one-page uh, clarity. So in one page, you come to know everything about that project, and you have to make it completely brief. Okay, it's a project overview. Now let's look at some important things probably that you have also may or may not have identified. I think all of you have looked at activities, resources, stakeholders. Okay, Um, and you have looked at also the human resources and the finances and your objectives, your goals, the problems that you're seeking to address, the solution that you have. Okay, so very interesting things that you have put across and very clearly. Um, well, is there certain areas that we still think that we have missed out? Okay, let's look at this. I would like to look at whenever you're looking at a project and you're looking at managing a project, you can look at managing a project at three important, what do you call it? When you say management, you're looking at efficiently delivering a project. So what are the important aspects of project management? Okay, so I'll come to overview once I look at some. Now I'm just going to a little theory which will actually cover what I'm saying, but in specific areas. Now I did not want to speak of theory in the beginning of the class because you would have, kind of um, wondered what is it about. Okay, so let me go straight away to my presentation from morning, which I was talking to you about. So I spoke to you about these various sectors. Okay. Can you see my screen?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
So, yeah. So what we are looking at is certain, to put it in corporate terminology or to put it in a very simple project management terminology, we're looking at understanding what are the skills, tools, okay, and processes required to take up a project successfully. Okay, so when we went on to look at the different sectors, we looked at if I'm coming up with a project, do I have or does my team have certain skills? Does it have certain tools and management processes required to undertake a project successfully? Okay. Now, if you notice, if you look at any of business ventures, they will look at persons in the project who have good skills. That means, does the staff of the project have the right skills? Tools is what consists of the materials or the required, things to be put into place for manufacturing. Okay, like in a project, they would look at, suppose in an office, do you have the infrastructure? Do you have the computers? Do you have the documentation? Okay, those tools. So you may be a good, for example, you may be an efficient office administrator, but if you do not have the required tools, you will not be able to deliver. Okay, then the third element in order to make a project managed well and to succeed, you require the processes. That means, what do you do first? What do you do second? What do you do third? What is the start and what is the end of any project? And what are the in-betweens in that process? That means if you are going into manufacturing, for example, you want to manufacture a particular product. So what do you need to do? You would need to procure raw material, for example. That raw material would need to be transported. You would need to look at operations. You would need to look at setting up a plant. You would need to get the machinery required for that plant into place. You would require X number of employees. Those X number of employees would need to be trained. Those persons who are trained would then be operationalized in terms of timings and a set pattern in order to deliver X number of goods by the end of the month, or say in a quarter. Suppose normally in a corporate sector we look at quarters. So in a quarter, what would be the required delivery? So that is all the processes involved. So look at your own self now. I know that I'm lucky to have in this class many of you who are from the social work sector. So I don't have to actually give you examples from the social work sector, but I am giving you a little background of the corporate so that you will be able to understand this when we are looking at a project efficiently. Mind you, I'm using the word efficiently and effectively. There are two words that I'm using: efficient and effective. Okay, efficient is how well I do my work, and effectively is how much I'm able to deliver. Okay, how effective I'm able to produce the outcomes. Okay, so when you're looking at the whole process, okay, so in a project you're looking at delivery as a very important aspect. So skills, tools and processes are very important. Okay, so as I just mentioned to you, set of skills is basically a specialist knowledge or skills and experience. Now look at any given organization. Okay, you have to have people who are qualified. I use the word qualification because unless the person is trained, for that matter, if you have a person who's holding a managerial post, for example, your CEO, or in social work sector, you have the project director. Okay, you have the program coordinators. Okay, you have the social workers. Okay, in a corporate sector, you have the CEO, then you have the line managers. Okay, whatever, you have operations, purchase, all these various, they all have certain skills. They are trained. They're not simply people who are holding a position. The second important thing is experience. If you notice, I started my class by asking you which sector you belong to, what is your experience, what are you qualified with, and what has been your experience. So you notice that if you're looking at a project, we are going to look at what are you qualified and what is your experience. Okay, and is this able to reduce the level of risk within a project and thereby enhance its likelihood of success. So what you're looking at in project management, maximum number of goods or products or services delivered. Okay, or as we know in social work, you say the maximum number of beneficiaries reached or your outcomes realized. Okay, so that will mean that your project is successful. So that is with regard to skills. The second important thing is a suite of tools. Suite means a whole collection of tools. What are these tools? As I mentioned to you just a little while earlier, if you're looking at an office setup, you're looking at documents. Now, I think all of us are very familiar about working with office setups. You can look at what is the document templates that you require. What are the registers? What is the documentation in place? Okay. What is the planning required? Is there any software that needs to be put into place? What is this audits check? You have checklist. Whereas that if a process is to be followed, there will be a set pattern of a checklist. Like say, I'm sure all of you have been on the shop floor or you have been to companies. They will tell you that this department flows into this department, and there is a there is a sequential progression in order to. I'll give a simple example. If you have ever been to a manufacturing plant of an automobile section, okay, an automobile company, you will notice, or for that matter, you have even many other companies. I'm just giving you an automobile means it's easier to understand. You have, like say, the setting up of an entire vehicle, the production of the parts, then the assembly line production, how it gets assorted and it's put together, and then you have the various sections of the assembling of the entire car or vehicle. Okay, and then there is a whole process. So there is a checklist for that. And finally, you have certain review forms. So there is a lot of tools involved in the entire process, right from office to manufacturing to the whole process involved in it. Okay. So I also spoke about processes just now. So processes and the techniques required to monitor. See, when you're looking at processes, why do we say there is a sequential process? Okay, because when we're looking at delivery, you're looking at giving a set number of goods at the end of a particular time. So what is your thing is that you need to maintain quality production, in whole area of corporate management, we look at quality control. So when you're looking at quality control, you're looking at how best you can come out with a quality product or a service within a particular time frame with the least amount of money, or rather with the judicial use of money, and covering a larger frame, okay, scope. Okay, so how does it work out? So it's interesting because process needs to be defined and captured in a framework. Okay, so when you're looking at quality management, you're looking at quality that is delivered at a particular time. You're looking at change. Change management again is understood as the change from a raw material to a finished product, or for that matter, from a community that is, totally disengaged to a community that is empowered. Okay, so you're looking at change as a process. Risk and issue management is looking at what are the probable disturbances that could come into a project. When you're looking at risk, you're looking at the potential harm that could break down the processes. So understand risk management as a possibility of those threats, those difficulties, those challenges that can break down a process. And issue management is looking at, what are the, how did you manage, or how did you address a conflict situation? Okay, so now you notice, are you able to connect this to some of the projects? Let me stop here for a while. Anybody would like to have a comment on this whole understanding of project management when I'm looking at it as skills, tools, and processes? Any comments from you who are hearing? I would have switched on my camera because, when I talk, I even use my hands, and hands in the sense, gestures. I'm used to talking very animatedly, so I'm really missing my classroom. So tell me, uh, those in the class, I mean, are you able to vibe with these points on project management? When you're looking at project management, you're looking at those set of activities that actually work towards the success of a project using skills, tools, and management processes. Yeah. Any comments on this? Hello.
Yeah.
So, yeah, whatever the task we did before the conversation about developing a project overview, I am able to reconnect how it would have, how I would have incorporated certain more points to, you know, to have a better overview of that particular project, or how the tools can be, incorporated in that whole setup, how the skills can be
Yes.
identified and use them while I'm doing any kind of a project or any kind of activity. So this is
Yeah.
what I'm able to, visualize myself when I'm doing another project review or something like that.
Yeah. We'll come to project review. Project review, I will lead you
The
to how to
overview,
really
I
review
mean,
a project.
yeah, I
Yeah.
mean
Overview.
overview.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, Priyanka. Thank you so much for responding. Yeah. Okay. So I think, yeah. Anybody else would like to have a comment or two on this? Okay, so project management, as we understand, is a set of skills, tools, and processes that can effectively work towards management. Okay, so now when we're looking at a project overview, and there are certain qualifications, so what is it? What is these qualifications? What is this overview? So I started off asking you to write an overview. So a project overview, as you understood now, as I've been leading you systematically, is to understand, it outlines the important details of your project. Okay. So if I flip between, my laptop is a little bit slow. I hope I can flip between the Word document that I created. Let me see. Uh, Probably it's a little bit difficult to flip between screens because of my internet and other issues. Let me see. Let me not lose track of what I'm doing. Okay, so yeah. So you see, when we're looking at a project, we looked at various elements of this overview. Okay, so some of the key elements that we looked at is your goal, your your rationale. Okay, your resources, risk, stakeholders. Okay, see, I'm just those in black. I mean, in highlighted rather. Those are the issues, and in block, or rather in bold, are some of the important components of a overview: context, background, objectives, okay, expected outcomes. Okay, so now this expected outcomes is something what I was talking to you about, is that every project will have certain important details like the goals. Okay, the goals is important, the risk is important. And why do we need to know this? Because if I am a funder, or if I am the CEO of the organization, when I look at the overview, I will say whether I need to put money into this project. I will see whether I need, what is the return on investment. You know, every corporate has an ROI. I think you're familiar with this term. Okay, ROI is return on investment. Now, if I would like to put in X amount of money into a project, why would I do it? Okay, so in my project overview, the boss of the company should be able to say what will, will I be, will this project be successful? Will I be able to get more money from this project that I'm putting money into? Okay. It contains, yeah. So now we'll go on to see in a project overview what comes into a project overview. A project overview will have a project name. I think maybe many of us did not say it, but you know, every project will have a project title. Okay, in social work, if you look up, if you take up any project, you will have a title on the project, like what is the name of the project. Now, I did not highlight it earlier, but when I will be speaking about the project proposal, I will go into details about how you come out with a project name, which can be derived from your goal statement. Okay, so I won't go too much into this. Project manager, who is the project manager? So that means you will give an entire organogram as to say who will be who are important, you know, persons within your project, like say the ones who are the managers, some key staff. I mean, you don't need to write their names, but you need to write that in this project I will have, you know, kind of this structure that will consist of um, 3 managers, 6 you know, field staff, or 2 office staff, and you know, whatever, and 8 outreach people, or whatever, or outreach workers, or whatever. So what you'll do is you will write a basic amount of numbers of the staff, human resource, that will cost the project, that will cost the company. Okay, it includes many other things like the problem, okay, that it may solve. As I said, as soon as you give a project, the interested thing, the person reading would be needed to know is what is the problem that I'm looking at solving. So you will look at that problem, the goal the team hopes to achieve. That means in that you will say that my team is looking at addressing the livelihood issues of the farming community in Tamil Nadu, for example. Okay, and I am looking at converting the incomes of farmers of this area from say 8,000 a month to 40,000 a month. Okay, so that is a goal that you're looking at, and you're looking at transforming the lives of the people through livelihood. Okay, so that is the problem that you're looking at resolving. So project overviews are typically 1 page that I've already mentioned to you, and the managers tend to include a project overview at the beginning of a proposal or a project plan. See, another way of looking at a project overview is, I'll just give you an example. Suppose if you go to a funding agency, the first thing they will ask you is a concept note. Okay, in corporate terminology, it would be called a project overview, but also in social work areas, wherever you go to a funding agency, they will say, can you give me a concept note? Okay, what is a concept note? A concept note again is a 1 or 2 page document that gives you a brief on the project, which states clearly what is the project about, as in what is the goal, okay, what are the deliverables in terms of outcomes, who are the key stakeholders, okay, what is the processes involved, what are the key activities, and what would be the finances required to address the issue through the key activities. Now you will say that in 2 pages, okay, And of course, strategy. I didn't mention it here. The strategy, how you would actually go about it. Okay. So as I said to you in this last bullet point here on the screen is the beginning of a proposal or a project plan to introduce a reader to the topic. That means you are actually, in a nutshell, like how you have in a research proposal, you have a executive summary. Another term is called a concept note or a project overview. Okay. So how do you write a project overview? Okay. So the important thing to write in a project overview is to determine the scope of your project in terms of deadlines, budget, deliverables, as I was mentioning to you, team members, that is the human resource, and the feedback. The feedback is the evaluation. How do you? So that will be a scope of your project. The next important thing to understand is to write in your overview is any research information. What do I mean by research information? You give the reader a little background. So going back to, I think one of you have mentioned that, and I purposely mentioned it as background, but actually it is a problem identification or a problem statement, wherein you will write the problem in the context or the background of researched information. You will need to go back to the market, as corporates will tell you, go to the market, find out who your customer is, find out, is your product really a need in the market? What is the need of your product or your service in the market? An example would be, was there a need for DMart to set up a whole chain of stores that are, DMart is based on the concept of a, what they call it, a market that is you have a lot of products in one store. Okay. It's another enlarged form of a grocery, but which enables a person to pick and choose. Okay. So you had, before DMart came up, was there any other stores in India? Before DMart came up, was there any other stores in India?
Yeah, Apna Bazaar kind of.
Yeah, Big Bazaar was there, for example. Big Bazaar.
Apna Bazaar, yeah.
Yeah, you had right from the 70s, believe me, you may have not been born at that time, many of you. From the 70s and the 80s, at least when I was younger, I knew one of the very famous, this kind of concept was already existing in India. One of the main stores in Bombay, at least Mumbai, where I live, was Akbar Ali's. Have you heard of Akbar Ali's?
Yes.
It is a concept of a mega store. Now Akbar Ali's did very well, but why did Akbar Ali's did not become a DMart? Okay, or why didn't it become a Big Bazaar for that matter? And why did Big Bazaar did not, capture the markets like DMart? Okay, probably it was all strategy also, something based like Walmart in the West. Okay, so these are all things that business research will give you a lot of information on, because they research the market. You need to research the unknown before you start. And that also means in social work, you need to do a background study. In social work, we call it a needs assessment. Okay. So before you start your project, you do a needs assessment, talk to your clients, clarify their doubts. You do a market survey. In corporates, we say a market survey, and we say we come to know whether the market is, can you capture, now say suppose the market is 100%, can you capture, what is the market share? I'm using a little business terminology, pardon me for that. So you're looking at capturing the market. So you say, can I make a dent in the market by capturing a share of the market? Share in the market is not share market. It is saying that given 100%, how much of the market can I capture? So DMart, when they entered in, they must have thought Akbar Ali's was like, okay, it was holding a very great share in the market. Okay, in terms of mega stores. Then they changed the concept, refined the concept, and many others also refined it earlier. Okay, by setting up those, Apna Bazaar was another example. Sahkari Bandar. If you're in Bombay, you will know of another store called Sahkari Bandar. You heard of Sahkari Bandar? I used to live in Kulaba before, so there was a Sarkari Bandar, which was pretty good.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes,
So
sir.
Sarkari Bandar again is an excellent concept, but it did not what you call scale up. You know, scale up like Big Bazaar and then now the classical example is DMart. Okay, so that is the thing. So you need to clarify the doubts, expectations, processes. What is the finances involved? What is the risk involved? Okay, so if you can do that in your project, it's very important. Okay, create an outline of task deliverables, time frames, and roles of members, and assumptions and the resources required. Okay, so now what are we looking at is what are the tasks. So this is the whole understanding of the processes which I was telling you. Okay, what are those processes involved in order to do a set task, means activities according to project, social work project. So you're looking at what are the activities, what are the deliverables, as to say 10 training programs, so many setting up so many units, getting so many livelihoods, so many farmers into switching to organic farming, so many whatever. Then you're looking at time frames. You're saying, okay, you're going to get this worked out within a period of first phase 2 years, second phase 3 years, and the last phase would be a closure or walking out of the project. Okay, so then you have a whole set of timelines. Then you have roles of members. Who will do what is the HR, assumptions is the risk involved. Okay, and what risk means, you say that risk analysis is very important. As I just mentioned to you in the last slide, risk analysis is important because you say that provided that this does not occur in the future. What is this? That provided that uh, you know your customers will not they will take the effort of coming to a mega store. Okay, provided there is no government rules that uh, provided that government does not put any kind of sanctions on uh, scaling up of mega stores. Okay, so that's an assumption. So suppose if some, like it happened in the NGO sector, suddenly government put a clamp down on FCRA. Now that was a big thing because that was a risk probably I hope many projects had in mind, that if the government had to come down heavily on their finances, that is the end of the project. Okay, that's an assumption. Resources. Very interestingly, we understand what are the resources that we have in terms of, of men, money, and materials, as they call it. No, men means no gender bias in this case. What we mean by is human resources. Materials is all your raw materials or any kind of unfinished products. Okay. Uh, and what did I say? And material and yeah. So what is your money? Yeah, how much of resources do you have? Men, money, and resource and materials. Okay. So what is the money involved is your resources in terms of finances. Okay. So what we are looking at is resources in all aspects of resources. We're looking at a social work project. You're looking at what is your staffing, what is your stakeholders involved in it, which are the different stakeholders, and where is your funding coming from. Okay, so if that can be cleared. Okay, so you share a draft and you can revise it. Okay, now actually I had intended to do this. So I'll give you an example. I had put up a template here in the sense of when you're looking at a corporate project. Okay, you're looking at the name of the project, a project manager in terms of the name of the leader of the project. So you have a CEO or you have a project director, you have the sponsor, you have the business case. Okay, business case means as to say, how it will. I was telling you what is the return on investment ROI, or what, how will the business profit in terms of how will it add value to the company. Okay, then the problem. Okay, how is it addressing the problem? What are the goals and objectives that you seek to achieve? Deliverables, task, and the risk and obstacles. So now if you can put this up, I can tell you confidently, I'm telling you, you as a CSR manager or whatever post or whatever designation you hold in the future, if you can do this in a one page, if you can write that out, conceptualize, visualize and put it down, you will be able to approach your boss and say, yes, this is what I have in mind. I've gone to the field and this is what I think I need to say to you. Okay. Now this is from a corporate sector. I just picked it up. Maybe this is like skincare marketing, and then you have a marketing. Now this is a typical corporate example, which is a media campaign. Okay, so the company was worried that the skincare products was not delivering, or rather they were not making enough of profit. Okay, and nobody was very much interested in that. Okay, so they wanted to increase the sales targets. So in order to increase the sales target, they decided on a marketing campaign. So they had certain, now I think this would interest Sakshi a lot, as she comes from the communication PR background. So when you're looking at a project which is concerning, say, marketing, now for that matter, doesn't mean that this does not have hold water in the case of social work projects. Okay, social work projects also today, in today's date and time, if you are not able to market your project, or if you're not able to kind of get your project down or mobilize your community, then you will not be able to effect change in that community. I would put it like this. Okay, so now the goals of this project was, to reach out to certain target age group of women, and they would get them to follow them on social media. So they looked at their access to social media, and because of their access to social media, they would buy their products, and the goals and their sales would increase. Okay, so now this is what they wanted to do. They decided to make a promotional video for 30 seconds, and they would take pictures and discuss this products, and they would interact with their target groups. In this way, they would be able to increase the sales target. Okay. So they have certain risk also that they mentioned. So now this is an example. I carefully gave you an example from the corporate sector because I would like you to look at the determined approach of the corporate sector when it comes to pursuing a project. Often we who are social workers, or other in the social work sector, we lack, probably maybe it's a kind of we need to have the drive of a corporate approach. So that brings me to the next section of my class, which will be on approaches to project management. So whatever I've shared till now, do you have any questions on this? I think this is sufficiently clear. Hello.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So like, later on, I will also give you a small little assignment on writing a concept note, which is similar to a project overview, so that you will be able to, come up with a concrete thing. But I'll give it to you a little later, so that when I give you an input on proposal, you'll be able to understand a lot more on a concept note. Okay. So for the moment, we will take a 5 minutes break. Is it okay? We take a 5 to 10 minutes break, and then
Yes,
we'll
sir.
come back to 10 minutes. Yeah, that gives me a
Yes.
time to uh, catch up. Okay, uh, take a glass
Thank
of
you.
water. Yeah, yeah. We'll come back in 10 minutes.
Okay, sir.
Yeah, it is now 12:30. We'll come back at 12. It's rather 12:34. So we'll come back at say 12:45.
Okay,
12:45.
sir. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, sir. Yeah.
Yes. Hello, welcome back again. Yeah, are we there in the class? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. One more person, I think, has to return. I think Sakshi may be traveling. Yeah, Almin and Sakshi. Yeah, Indumati is also there. She's on hold. Sakshi, you can send a message on the group. Sakshi. Yeah, she can return.
Okay, sir.
Okay. Yeah. And also tell Indumati also to come back. Okay. While the others are coming back, let me just look at. Yeah. So just a very quick recap of what we have learned from morning in terms of understanding project management. Anybody would like to summarize what we have understood as project management? So if we look at project management, what are we looking at basically? If you'd like to summarize it in a statement or in a line. Anybody?
So it's a project overview, you mean?
Yeah. 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 Project overview is one document that you come out with, but project management is basically what? It is the skills, tools, and processes.
Yeah.
Okay. Skills, tools, and management processes required to undertake a project successfully. Okay. To put it in one statement. Okay. So what you're looking at is how well you can utilize skills, the required tools and management processes to undertake a project successfully. Okay, like I try to make it into one statement because it's easier and also contains everything. When you're looking at overview, you're looking at basically a one-page document, or a kind of a project sheet or whatever you can call it. Like in social work, we call it a concept note. Okay, so a concept note which gives you an overview of the project, okay, containing important elements so as to introduce the reader to the project. Okay, so I think that is what we were, and we looked at certain elements in this overview, right? Okay, one would be some basic details about the project name, manager, sponsor, and then the second important thing is what is the problem and the solution, the deliverables, the risk, and then you can look at other elements also, like what would be the objectives, outcomes, the finance involved in it, okay, in terms of deliverables. Okay, so in short, you can say it is what is the problems, what would be the goals, objectives, deliverables, and the risk. Okay, so that is what we were looking at. Now, along with that, I also spoke of 4 other important things that you need to cover, when we qualify a project. Okay, so when we're looking at qualifying a project, or rather the project has certain value, so I spoke about time, cost, scope, and quality, if you remember. Okay, so maybe I'll just share the screen so that I've put it down into one slide, which I can share it with you. Let me see how I can do it. So good. I think all have returned back. 4, 5. No, one more still yet to come. Yeah. So if I would look at it as what are the project elements that qualify a project in terms of quality, you look at time. How much of time does it take? Sorry. What is the cost involved? What is the scope? That is what we try to look at in the project overview in terms of the project size, goals, requirements, and then we looked at the quality of that project in terms of resources like human, material, equipment, hardware, software. So if you're looking at a project overview, you need to make sure that these elements somehow come into the project. Okay, so this is important. Okay, now let's go on to the next important area that we need to look at when we're looking at a project, and that is the approach to a project in terms of how do you actually work out a project. When I say approach, means how do you really implement it in terms of making sure that there are deliverables are achieved. Okay, so let's take a little time and look at one example. Okay, so suppose if we I'll just take one example. Okay, so suppose if we look at one of the projects, anybody would like to volunteer in terms of looking at your project which you have shared earlier? Anybody would like to just go through this entire process? So suppose if you're looking at a project, anybody would like to say? Let me look at it. Suppose if I take this project, either I can take livelihood or I could take education. Okay. Yeah. So if we look at this, who's ready to volunteer? Then we'll take one project and we'll sketch it out through the approaches, and we'll also sketch out the process involved in it. Anybody?
I don't mind volunteering, sir.
Yeah. So
Okay.
that is Kushal will yeah, Kushali, no, you're right. Kushali will take the livelihood project. Kushala will take the livelihood project. Okay, so you have it on your screen here, the livelihood project that she shared on the context, the background, the objectives, expected outcomes, duration.
Yeah.
You spoke also about the activities, some things about the activities. You looked at the timelines, and you also spoke a little bit about the risk involved.
Actually, I had put only the headings. I couldn't write much in those 10 minutes.
Yeah, that's fine. That's okay for a start. Okay, because we were going through. It's like a kind of more, these activities sometimes are more to get you to think along those lines. Now I'm introducing you to a mind mapping system which I use very often with my students, especially during lockdown times. I take lectures. I use a lot of mind maps to be able to clarify what we're looking at. Okay, so let's give it a title. Okay, so suppose if you are looking at your project, okay, on livelihood, Kushali. So
Kushala.
how would you like to look at your title of sorry, Kushala. I've written Kushali, so I'm keeping on saying Kushala. Okay. What is the meaning of your name, Kushala?
Kushala means
this is just by the way.
No, yeah. Kushala means smart worker. Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah. I thought I lost the network. Yeah. Now I can hear you. Yeah.
Kushala means a smart worker.
Okay, that's interesting. That's nice. No, names of people also are very. Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, we need smart people today in terms of efficiency. Yeah, so great, Kushala. So yeah, coming back to this point of livelihood, what would be the kind of topic? So suppose if I say title your project. So suppose if I say give it a title, okay?
Yeah.
So how would you give a title to your project? I'll put it on the screen again here. Your project was there. You told us about your project, about the background. So suppose if I say give a title to it.
Yeah.
Suppose I say give a title to your project. Yeah. What would be you like? You can just give it.
Normally in our
Like, don't worry about
organization,
making it so good. Yeah.
in our organization, we name it like livelihood enhancement project.
I'll go with it. Livelihood enhancement. That's it.
Yeah.
Livelihood enhancement project. Okay, just let's call it the livelihood enhancement project. Okay, I'll put it down here in my mind map too, so we'll follow that. So I would like you to, Kushala, and the others also can take part in the little activity. You can also add to the process. You need not be only Kushala. You can also add, others can add to the process. Now, when we're looking at a project, you would look at the project in terms of conceptualizing. Okay, so when you conceptualize a project, you would go through the whole understanding of, as you mentioned, the background. So I'll take what you are have in the screen before you and before me. So a livelihood insight. So you have a certain background. Okay, so let's put it down
So your
immediately
voice is
since.
breaking in sorry to disturb you. So voice is breaking in between, and
Yes, Priyanka.
I'm not
A little
able
bit.
to
Okay.
understand. Yeah,
I
a bit. Or I don't know.
Uh,
Or if I'm only having
no,
this problem.
let me see
no.
how I can.
Actually, your voice is breaking.
Is it?
I thought there is some problem in my earphone since morning. So your voice is breaking, sir.
Okay. Okay. My voice is breaking. I'll just check my internet connection. Just give me a minute. I'm not very sure what is the problem. Yeah. So probably my internet is running well. Probably, but still, I think it may be a fault from my side only. I'll try to see how we can. That's the reason I cut off my camera. Uh, shall I try to shift to my phone internet? Hello.
Yes, sir. No problem.
Let me see if I can shift my phone internet and see if this works. Hello.
Yes, sir.
Can you hear me now? I have connected to my phone internet. Is it better or
Yeah.
is it sound?
Better, better.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Fine. Fine. So that maybe there's a connection sometimes with the Wi-Fi network. I mean,
Yeah.
it's a connected. I have a Wi-Fi at home, So maybe the Wi-Fi is not working too well. So I connected to my phone. Okay, so now if it is clear, then we'll go ahead because my phone is also good enough. Okay, so coming to this, we were just talking about livelihood as a project, and I said let's look at a title that will give us clarity. Now we'll go ahead and see what is this and how can we improve upon this. We'll stay with what you have said, livelihood enhancement project. So let's call it the livelihood enhancement project. I'm just typing it on your screen. On your screen, you will notice a mind map that I often use. There are different. You can use whichever suits you. There's Wondershare. There is another mind mapping software called X, which I also use. But this is a older version which I was using earlier. So we will use this one for the moment, Wondershare. So this is on, yeah. So we'll take it as project.
So what's the name?
Sorry, livelihood. How did we name it as?
No, mind map.
Mind
app.
map.
Yeah. App.
Yeah. No. Yeah, there are two software.
Wondershare.
Wondershare.
Mind
The
map.
other one is Wondershare. Yeah. Wondershare Mind Master. It's called Wondershare Mind Master. Okay, these projects you get lots of softwares in the market. I mean, in the available. Most of them are free, and then there is a paid version if you require, which I don't think so is required, but it's fine. So livelihood enhancement project. So coming to this livelihood enhancement project. So I will just write that down. So livelihood enhancement. Okay. Project. Looking at a livelihood enhancement project, what are you looking at basically? What are the elements of this project that you would need to look at? So suppose if you're writing a concept note in a livelihood enhancement project, what are the elements that you would look at to figure in? Okay, so one would be the, as you mentioned in your word, which I typed out earlier, one would be a little background, okay, or context. Okay, so I'll just put it down, context or a background. Okay, so you will give us a little background on the people there, the target group. So this context or the background. This context or the background will tell you more about the project in terms of understanding this project, giving you a why to the project. Okay, so you are kind of setting the stage. Okay. Yes. What other things that should come into this project when you're looking at a project?
Next would be the objective or rationale for this project.
Okay, so I'll just immediately put it down. Yeah. So you have certain objectives, or you would put it down as certain objectives, or I would put it down as certain, you would have certain goals or objectives of the project. Good. Yeah. And what else do you say?
After that, I would use the duration of the project.
Okay, you say duration. Okay, fine. So you have a certain duration of the project, or we say the time
Frame.
Okay. Oh, where did it go? Okay, yeah. Duration of the time. Yes. I hope you can see my screen because then it becomes very interactive.
Yeah. You can see.
Then yes. Yeah, very good. We will be able to follow what I'm trying to build at, and then you will see the whole process unfolding before you. What else do you think? The context, the background, the goals, the objectives, the duration, the time.
So you're asking me, right?
Yes. You are the others also. It's not only Kushala that has to respond. Please, others also can respond. Indumati, Tanvi, Almin, Sakshi, Priyanka, please respond.
So target group also needs
You
to
can
be
also add value
defined
to this entire process. Very good, very good. So I'll just put down all that you're saying. So you're looking at a kind of a target group. Okay, so you have a target group. Yeah.
Activities.
So before this, before we
Yeah, I think
start with,
somebody.
so I have a question here.
Yes, please tell me.
So Priyanka here, I just wanted to gauge
Yeah.
the understanding before we could reach to a background or a why. Do we have to come with the need assessment or any kind of a data which will give us the solid background on how to go ahead and set a target group or a goal and objective? So does this include here, or we are assuming that the need assessment is done and now we have to develop a project? So I'm
No, no,
getting
you put it down.
little
Yeah. So let's say.
confused about this.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's look at it as a livelihood enhancement project that you're doing. So what would be the various components that you need to put into place in order to make this project happen? Let's put it down that way. So, if I, uh, if I put this question down here, okay, so suppose if I put down this question, then you will be clear about what I'm heading for. Okay, I want to do this livelihood enhancement project. So what are the various components required to make this project happen? Okay, so I would need to get a context or a background. So I would need to do a needs assessment. Valid, Priyanka. So definitely, we'll go ahead with that. Yeah. Yeah. Anybody else would like to? I'll just go back again to the Word document. Yeah, you can even put in what are the elements required to make this project happen. Or you want to use another word, make that present project materialize. Yeah. So you say a needs assessment is required. You need to have a target group. Okay. Certain goals, objectives. Yes.
Then we need to assess how we
Anybody
can
else?
implement, how the
Okay.
implementation part will do.
Yeah, I'll put down all that you're saying and then we'll look at this whole thing. So you're looking at implementation. Implementation of a project. You're looking at saying, okay, yeah, this project has to be done. So how do you go about the implementation of the project? Yeah.
Sir, what about outcome or input output of the project?
Yeah, okay, fine. So you're looking at outcomes. So where do you think outcomes would go? Would it be here? Yeah, so your outcomes will flow from your goals or your objectives. So you have your outcomes coming out here. So you have your outcomes that will flow from your objectives, right?
Required budget, finance.
Okay. Okay, so you would require a project, you would require a budget for that project. Okay, good. So a budget which would give
Then the
you
resources.
okay, good. So you would require resources. So suppose if you say resources, what do you have in mind?
I mean, resources. When I'm thinking about what the community has and what do they need in future. If we are thinking about the rural livelihood, then suppose the agriculture, they have a land, but the technique needs to be, the knowledge about good farming, about related to that work needs to be introduced to them. And if they do not have any equipment, so we need to think about provide them a good equipment which will minimize their issues, and the production of the crops will increase. what are the other resources they have available besides agriculture, if there are any husbandry projects which we can run into, which can give them additional income. So that kind of resources,
Mhm.
alternate options for their
Okay.
main occupation, that
Mhm.
also we can map under the resources maybe.
Okay, so you're giving that in case they are working on agriculture and you need to look at alternative options to agriculture. So you could look at that possibility when you're giving them some knowledge. So resources in terms of knowledge that is shared. Okay. See, when you're looking at
Even we
what are the
can,
elements required? Yeah, go ahead.
sorry,
Yeah,
I disturbed you. I was just
go ahead.
thinking, when we are
Go ahead.
talking
Go ahead.
about resources, we can think about the government scheme also, which can be implemented throughout the, for the upliftment of such a group or something like that. Whether it will be a separate or a
Okay.
resources, I'm not able to bifurcate that.
You can look at government schemes, as you're saying. It is more about the knowledge to government schemes that you can look at.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah. So, yeah. See, the more you kind of, we are going through this brainstorming process. So, because you need to understand what will go into a project. Okay. And when you're looking at the elements that make this project happen or materialize, you will also look at let me introduce you to another word here. Maybe I would like to, sorry. I would like to introduce you to another word here. And when you're looking at your livelihood enhancement project, you're looking at a process that is involved, okay, in this whole thing. Another word for a process would be, I'm introducing you to a management term. Now, slowly I'm taking you towards what our entire session is about. It's a life cycle. Okay. So when you're looking at a life cycle of a project, okay. Um, in the morning, I spoke to you about skills. Okay. I spoke to you about processes. Yeah. And what is the third part I was talking to you about? If you remember. Yeah.
Tools.
What is it that I spoke to you about? Yes, the
Tools.
skills, the tools, and the processes.
Yes.
Now, when you're looking at now, come back to this. Okay, you're looking at skills, you're looking at tools, and you're looking at the processes. Okay. Now you're looking at efficiently managing this project. But this efficiently managing this project happens within a whole life cycle. That means a project goes through a time frame. Okay, so when you're looking at a life cycle, you're looking at the process involved and you're looking at the time frame. Okay, or rather, I
Sir,
don't want to use the word time frame because
sir,
immediately you will be caught up in first year, second year, third year. Don't look at it this way. Okay, yeah, so, sorry, somebody had a query. Somebody wanted to share something.
yeah,
Yeah, please go
yeah,
ahead.
yeah. You are talking about efficient management. Do you think monitoring approach can be part of this document?
Very good. Yeah, yeah. I'll put it down because what you shared just now is very important. Okay, so you're looking at the whole understanding of monitoring. So you're looking at monitoring as a very important part of the process. Okay, so good enough. Monitoring, what do you mean by monitoring? When you use the word monitoring, what are you actually saying?
Here
You're
I
saying?
mean to say, I'm saying monitoring the project, whether it is going
Process. Okay.
as per
Yes, yes, yes.
process
Perfectly
as
agree.
well as, yeah, process as well as whether it is helping to achieve the objective or any deviation or changes are required. I'm including that as well.
Very good. Excellent. Excellent. So you got it right. I just wanted to make sure that you know the term monitoring. When you use the word monitoring, it is to understand in a given project, am I accordingly following the goals? Am I deviating from the proposed outcomes? Okay. Do I need to change course during the lifespan
Project
of the
cycle.
project? Okay. Yeah. Yeah. According to the budget. Yeah. The budget. Yeah. Very good. Okay. What else are we looking at? So let me put it again. I'm giving you, when you're looking at making a project happening, I'm giving you another clue. When you're looking at a project happen, you're looking at a time frame. So I was telling you, I said, you're looking at a process and you're looking at a time frame. So when you're looking at a time frame, you're looking at what? Let me see if I can mark it separately. When you're looking at a time frame, you're looking at what? You're looking at the start and end of a project.
So the exit
Right?
plan needs to be there.
Yeah, sorry.
Exit plan needs to be
Sorry, I
there.
didn't get.
I was just
Yes,
saying
yes.
that when we are ending a project, so there should be an exit plan. So that needs to be planned when we are planning any project.
Okay, so you're saying an exit closure plan, or in business you call it a closure or you call it an exit plan. Okay.
Exit
Okay, so you
strategy.
have a closure. Yes, I mean, sorry.
I was saying we say exit strategy.
Hello. Yeah, the
I
exit
said
strategy.
we
Strategy is how
generally
you
say
would go
exit
about.
strategy. Yeah.
Yes, very good. So you have an exit. So I think we are coming closer to understanding how we look at the whole understanding of a project. So when you're looking at a project, you're looking at a process that is involved. You definitely are looking at skills. Okay. Let me put down very quickly some of the points that you already mentioned earlier. And you said that when you're looking at a project, you're looking at resources, but you're looking at very particularly human resources, right? Some of you have mentioned it when you were talking about it. So you're looking at human resources, you're looking at staffing. Okay, so when you're looking at a project, you're looking at the human resources. That means who are your staff? Okay, you're looking at an entire structure. So human resources as an, I'll put it down for your own understanding, a kind of an organogram, of the organization so that people deliver at the end of the story. Okay. Equipment, you rightly said, here you're looking at all kinds of equipment, whether it is, administrative, or you're looking at equipment that comes in terms of, some kind of equipment that you need to run the project. Like say for if it is livelihood enhancement project, say for farmers, you would require certain equipment like a tractor, or you would require certain, so some kind of machinery. I'll put down machinery, it's easier to understand. Okay, machinery or some kind of an equipment that would, or it could be anything like even office equipment. I'll put down machinery, and I put stroke office also. So it can be both office, or field, or whatever it is. Okay, so you have resources in terms of knowledge, human resources, equipment, and then you have the next important resources is the budgeting. Okay, the financial resources. So you're looking at a project which has a budget, a budget. Okay, I put it down as a budget because it's important to understand this. When you're looking at a project, you need to have a budget. In a budget, you have a budget, which you can draw. We'll go into details of that later. Now, this is very interesting that you have put up needs assessment. Okay, so when you're looking at needs assessment, you're looking at needs assessment of the community, and this needs assessment will lead you to a context or the background, or which will give you a clarity on this. Okay, yeah. In the needs assessment, you will also look at the target group, or rather, you will be looking at who this target group is, and yeah. Right. Any other things that you're going to look at? So suppose if you're looking at from the start to the end of a project, like as I said to you, you will have a start to the end of a project. Okay. How would you look at it from the start to the end? What would come in the start of a project?
Can we add end-line assessment?
Okay, yeah, definitely. You could add a kind of a end-line assessment. And what is that called? Another word which is commonly used as end-line assessment.
Impact assessment is a very big word actually.
Yeah. Okay. I'll just put it down as assessment as you mentioned it.
Okay.
Just to keep the terminology, which is very much done, is assessment. And when you're looking at assessment, you're looking at end-line assessment. Okay. Another word that is used is called evaluation. Okay. Yeah. Evaluation at the end of a project. Okay, you have an end-line assessment. Needs assessment is also called, another one is called a baseline. So since you use the word base end line, so you also have a baseline assessment. Okay. So a baseline assessment will give you a context in which you're looking at. The baseline assessment will come first, and then the context will be derived in the needs assessment, right? So things are falling into place now for you. Yeah. So now we will understand as we are discussing as to say how we are going about it to understand what is happening. So you have an assessment at the end. So how do you look at the entire project? Okay, how do we look at a project? So we look at a project when we say it from a duration or a time perspective. We look at a project having a start and an end. And in between the start and the end, you have what? You have the two important aspects of implementation and monitoring, right? Yeah. So you have a whole process. Yeah, you have in implementation, one of the important things you would have is the whole question of reporting. Okay, I'll put it down here. So you have a whole process of reporting that happens when you get into implementation, right? So you in the implementation you have that. So how can we look at it as definitely as how would you look at a project cycle? So why do I use the word a process or a life cycle or a project cycle? So suppose if I change this word now, when I say project life cycle, okay, so process cycle or life cycle. So I would like to use one word now, and I will just change it now to a project cycle. So suppose if I say a project life cycle, so I'll just change the terminology here and make it a project life cycle. So what would come under a project life cycle? Okay. A very easy way to understand this would be, let me, am I there or have I lost you? Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I just thought, probably my connection went. Okay. So suppose if I look at a project life cycle, so let me see if I can change my map a little bit. Where did it go? Oh, thank God. I thought I missed my thing somewhere. Okay, let's go to this map. Okay. So suppose if we are looking at a life cycle, okay, what would be the main beginning point? What would be the beginning point?
Conceptualization.
Yeah, conceptualization. Okay. Let me see if I can use another map that can take it over. Yeah, so you said conceptualization. Okay. So that would mean what? What would be the first step in that?
That is identification.
Down as planning. Yeah, yeah. So we will look at planning as one of the most important parts. Okay. Maybe this should come here. It should come on top actually. Okay, for the moment, let it be down, but actually it is, maybe this image is not correct. Okay, let me just use instead of wasting time, let me just simply use a simple Word document to make this happen. I'll just draw it out for you and I'll explain to you very simply, like as if I'm using a board. Okay, you can see my screen?
Yes, sir.
Hello?
Yes, sir.
So suppose if I, so suppose if I'm, okay, so suppose I'm using this, okay, what would come in first, as you can see, if I put planning, okay, what would be the next step after that? Would be?
With a need
I'll go back
assessment
to
baseline.
Okay, so you're looking at it in planning, you're looking at a baseline.
Yeah.
Okay, you're looking at a needs assessment.
Yes.
So we'll go back to our map so that you can take in from there what you have actually done. Okay, so you have in the planning, you have baseline needs assessment. Then the second step would be
Goal setting.
yeah. So okay, okay, I'll put it down. A needs assessment would lead you to goal setting. Okay. Then that would lead you to drafting a project. Okay.
Yeah.
Right. And an approval of a project. Okay. Then you would go on to a next step. Okay. The next step would be implementing. Yeah. Implementing the project. Okay. In implementing the project, what would you do?
Is it not arranging the resources, sir?
In
Next step.
drop. Ah, yes, yes. Yeah, you're right in that, arranging resources. Yeah. So in the approval of a project, what I meant to say is you draft a project, you would contact donors, okay? Yeah, contact donors and you will get an approval of a project. Here in the implementation of the project, you will arrange for resources, no? For resources like say human resources, okay? You're looking at other knowledge resources. You would need to arrange for these things, no? So then you will draw plans for effective and efficient, what do you call it?
Implementation.
Working of the project. Okay. So yeah. So this is for with regard to implementation. So you will have the second step would be implementation. You would have planning as the first step, then you would have implementation. Then the third would be monitoring. Okay, you monitoring the project. So you would monitor the project and then you would draw up a whole exercise of monitoring the project. That means regular visits and okay, so that would be the visits for monitoring, review and changes if required. So I'll put it as simply as that. And then the next is evaluation. Okay, evaluating the project. If you say some people would call it monitoring and evaluation as one, but evaluation is at the end of a project cycle. So understand that. So it's the end of the project. Okay, so you would have the monitoring of the project and then you would have the evaluation of the project. So it's important to understand these whole things. And you could also have either a closure of the project or you would have a drafting of a new or second phase of. This is important to understand, and now I'm just showing it to you because you would then be able to understand and draw conclusions as to when you're looking at a project, you're basically looking at four steps in a project. One would be planning, second would be implementing, the third would be monitoring, okay, and actually accordingly changing the course of your project, and the fourth would be evaluation. Now the closure of the project, some people would call the evaluation leading to the closure. So you could even have that. So now that brings me to my PowerPoint for today, where I have planned for my class, and I lead you immediately to very important aspect. I'll come back to some of those slides which I skipped earlier. I'll come back to that because when you look at project management lifecycle, I will first, now I shared that in the context of an actual social work situation that you're looking at. Okay. So when you're looking at a project, you're looking at starting your project. That's why I said from the start to the finish. Notice that's why a circle is best represented by how you say start to the end. So whenever you're looking at a project life cycle or you're managing a project from the beginning to the end, another word is beginning to the end, from the start to the finish, the start to the end. So you're looking at initiating your project, okay? You're planning your project, you're executing. Another commonly used word in business terminology is execution. I use the word implementation because in social work sector we use the word implementation. Now we're looking at project execution and project closure. Now why am I using these terms? Because this entire module which I'm sharing with you today is based on a business model. So you'll notice the terminology that I'm using is something that you can talk to your business manager, because most of us will be working in the corporate sector. When we use terminology, it's important to use terminology that your manager understands, because your manager is coming from an MBA field and your manager understands terminology that he's comfortable with. So when he looks at a project, he's looking at a project that is initiated, planned, executed and closed. So for him, there is only a project that starts and ends. In other words, a project that starts and ends. In between what comes, there is a planning, execution and the process of closing. So what do you mean by initiation? Initiation is when you begin your project, you initiate it through a process or a needs assessment, as we understand in social work. We define the project. There is a clear definition of the project. That means we have clearly the target group. For morning, we have been looking at, I've been leading you to identify who's your project target, who are your beneficiaries, what is it that you're looking at, what is the processes that you're looking at. So in this whole thing, then you are led through a process through this class to define your project. That definition led you to plan. Okay, so in the planning process, you went through a detailed process of planning. What would the planning entail? The planning entail needs assessment. Okay, the planning entail coming up with a baseline survey. The planning entail coming with a clear budget. Okay, and a plan that included the project overview. Now you'll understand what I went to. I led you to a lot of exercises to help you to come up with the project overview or a concept note that defines the project. I spent a lot of time of defining it because I think that clarity needs to emerge with each one of you as to say, when we look at a project, we need to define it clearly. Okay, and then we enter into a process of planning. That planning comes up into a project proposal. In my next class, I think it'll be the next class where we'll be looking at a project proposal. We will be evolving an entire project proposal. A project proposal will clearly define what that project is about and what are those elements of that project proposal. Okay, I won't go into those details because that will be in detail explained to you. So what comes into a project proposal? Okay, this planning will enable us to be able to give it to funders, get it approved, and also start. So once we are given the green signal of starting a project, then we work out the whole process of understanding how to implement the project. That is the project execution. Okay, in the project execution, we make plans, we make time schedules, we do a work breakdown structure. Work breakdown structure is what? You break down the entire project into a timeline. Into a timeline, that means to say that in a project, what are the different activities and when will you conduct those activities as per the months in a quarter? Okay, half year or yearly. Okay, now that is very interesting exercise which I will teach you in devising a project. Okay, we go further down and we say, yes, the project is on course. The project is going on as per plan. So what do? We start monitoring and controlling the project so that it does not deviate from the objectives that we have laid down in the planning. Okay, we had certain points in the planning which said, yes, these are the outcomes that I desire to see in the project. Now, in order to obtain those outcomes, I regularly monitor the project to see that we are not steering away from the project. We are not moving away from the project, but we go on to the course of the project. For example, taking the livelihood project, we would need to say, are we on track with the livelihood project? Okay, so that would be the whole process of monitoring. Then after the monitoring, we would then enter into a process of evaluation. Okay, now what happens is in evaluation, it can happen at the end of the project or even post implementation. And post the implementation, we will get an idea to understand the end line survey or the end line end line survey, or they call it the end line survey. Okay, the end line survey gives us interest as to have we obtained the outcomes for which we sought. Okay, and then there is a post implementation review. Post implementation review is after a year, 2 years, 3 years, depending upon the assessment of the impact of the project. Now we can say, like, has the project really impacted the people? What is the changes that have taken place in the lives of the people? Okay, so that will be a post implementation review. Now when we're looking at this, we look at it project's life cycle in this term. Okay, now you see PCM, project cycle management, is a term that is used in planning and monitoring. So if you say you're doing a PCM, even your boss will understand the terminology. Okay, a project cycle management. So we know for today that we understand projects, especially in development sector, we need to understand why they are failing. Many times projects fail because they have not taken into the account the needs and the views of, say, stakeholders. Like for example, a little earlier we were looking at is that have we consulted the customer? Have we consulted our client? Have we consulted the stakeholder in terms of the beneficiary? Okay, so we need to know whether we have consulted them so that we have taken into account their needs. The PCM is based on a project cycle, okay, and this has aspects of the project that needs to be considered right through. Each phase leads to the next. Now the first stage is project initiation. As we said, that a business problem or opportunity is identified, a feasibility study. See, in corporate circles you will call it a feasibility study, okay, or you will call it a needs assessment. So now once that is done, a project is initiated and then the terms of references are given. Now the terms of references is basically an MOU that is signed. Okay, MOU that is signed probably or a TOR as they call it, terms of reference, that gives you a clearly, in our social work terminology we call it a project proposal, and we say that this is the objectives of the project, this is the scope of the project, this is how we will go about the project. We give a clear outline of the project, outline in as in we say that we use a log frame. A log frame is something that gives you the clear desired outcomes. Okay, then we then we appoint a manager, and that manager is either called a executive director, or in corporate sector we call it a project manager, or sometimes even the CEO, whatever it is, but normally it is the project manager. Approvals are then sought and then we go into a detailed process. Now the next step is the project planning. Okay, the project plan includes the complete project proposal, giving you the activities, tasks, dependencies, timeframes, the resource plan, the financial plan, the quality plan. Okay, the quality plans is making sure that you deliver as per the targets. See, now in the whole business circles, we know one thing is that targets are very important to achieve. You will notice the corporate social responsibility in your company, for example, they will tell you that if you're taking up this project on livelihood, tell me how many farmers are being targeted. There is a quality control even in that, and you will wonder, oh, am I in the social work sector? But in the social work sector itself, there are very clear deliverables. Okay, what is the acceptance plan? Acceptance plan is what we said earlier, is to understand what is the research done. That means what has been the background study done in order to understand the customer or the target beneficiary. Okay, what is the communication plan? Have the stakeholders been informed? For example, the stakeholders can be the beneficiaries, it can be the other stakeholders like the government, NGOs, other people, vested interest people. Okay, so have they been taken into consideration? Like for example, in this livelihood project, you will look at it and say, have the farmers been taken into confidence that this is their project? Is there a buy-in from the farmers? Are they clear that this is what you as an organization wants to do? Okay, so that has to be communicated. In social work terminology, we call it the ownership of the project. What do I mean by ownership of the project? That means the beneficiaries have a clear, what do you call it, a clarity, saying that this is our project. For example, you will notice this, especially when you're working in the social work field, that when the farmers, like I'm giving you the example of this project, okay, the farmers project on livelihood. If they have been taken into confidence at the beginning of the project, what happens is they have been informed and they are part of the whole process. Suppose like you have implemented an activity called organic farming. Okay, now organic farming is one of the activities where they have been trained on organic farming, and then they are led to a process of converting from chemical farming to organic farming. Okay, so what happens is that they begin to experience a change. There is an increase in the production, and then they begin to measure those productions, and then that is the monitoring part of it. So the communication takes place with them. That means the farmers say, yes, this is my project and I have seen the changes in this project. Okay, you need to inform them about it. The procurement plan is something that you need to say that if I have to purchase certain implements, for example, if you're running an office, you need stationery, you need infrastructure, you need equipment like computers. So suppose if you have a livelihood manufacturing unit, now take for example, the farmers say their production has gone down and you want to start an alternate, somebody spoke about an alternate livelihood. So suppose if you say I would like to start an alternate livelihood of manufacturing pickles, and they were farmers producing certain vegetables, so you're going to manufacture vegetables, pickles of that vegetable. So what you're going to do is you're going to have a plan for setting up a pickle manufacturing unit. You will have a plan for marketing of those pickles that are produced by the farmers. Okay, so then you will have a procurement plan. So in the project plan, you will have all these plans into position. Okay, hello, are you still listening to me?
Yes,
is there
sir.
everybody there?
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
Yes,
Yeah, I do hope you are listening. Then we move on to the third part of it, is the execution. The plans have been made, and that is in social work we call it the implementation phase. So the implementing the plans created to the project planning. Okay, so there is a series of management processes that we're looking at in terms of implementing. That means we have a clear plan of implementing. Who does what? Which is the line manager? Who is reporting to whom? What are the deliverables? And then you have a monitoring of those deliverables. Has the number of units to be produced by the livelihood manufacturing unit, have they been produced? Okay, has the vegetables been procured from the farmers? The quantity, the quality, all those things. So there is a control on the deliverables being output by the project. This includes identifying changes, risk and issues. So you will have a certain amount of risk. That is, risk is like, suppose if the procurement of the vegetables for the pickles, there was an issue. So how do you deal with that issue? So in the project execution, you have to time and again deal with problems that arise from the field. Okay, so you will have to, how much of the acceptance criteria, that means the farmers have been taken into confidence through the entire project execution. Once all the deliverables have been produced and the customer has accepted a final solution, the project is ready for closure. That means what? When you say that farmers were supposed to improve their livelihood, have the farmers really increased their production? Say on a given field of 1 hectare, has the production increased by say 1 hectare has produced 2 quintals, say suppose 2 quintals of vegetables or whatever, okay, or of some kind of cereals. So those 2 quintals, has it become 4 quintals? What has been the measure of change? And the change that you are looking at is quantitative and qualitative. Quantitative is what you will say, how many hectares have produced how many quintals. You will also look at qualitative change. Have the farmers changed from chemical farming to organic farming? Okay, and how much has been the buy-in of the farmer? Has the farmer been able to say yes and own the project? Thirdly, has the farmer been able to find alternate livelihood in case of certain risk? Okay, or you have made it as part of the project and said, okay, the farmers have been able to produce pickles and sell those pickles, whatever. I'm just giving an example of pickles because that is the easiest to understand. Okay, so those pickles have found a market and they are now on DMart shelves. Okay, so that is a impact that you're looking, or rather that is the deliverables. The impact will be what? The impact will be that the farmers have increased their incomes and are living a better standard of life. So there you will notify the indicators of that better life. The better life is what? For example, I'm giving examples for each. For example, a better life would be, the indicator of an impact would be that the farmers are now able to send their children to school. The farmers are now able to invest in 2 or 3 projects besides farming, or the farmers have been able to take up other whatever businesses or whatever it is. Okay, so you can look at impacts on this. This is the project execution that will be measured. Okay, and those. Now we come to the closure. Actually, the closure comes to the fourth point according to a project, because your boss would like to know when your project starts and when your project closes. So in social work, we know, if those who have studied social work would know, that there is a phases of project. You have the initiation phase, that is you have building up rapport, you go into the community and all that, and then you have a closure. But here we are looking at a closure of a project. That means when the deliverables have been reached, when the suppliers contracts have been fulfilled, when the resources from the funding organization have completed, you will have to send a complete report to the funding organization. You will need to communicate to all the stakeholders involved that the project is closed. And finally, the last step is to undertake an implementation review. Of course, that is what we call in social work terminology evaluation, to quantify the level of project success and identify any lessons learned for future projects. Okay. So what I've been speaking to you about in social work terminology: planning, implementation, monitoring and review. It's also called the PIME. You can note it down, PIME. It's an easy way to remember: planning, implementation, monitoring and evaluation, or review. This of course, this picture shows you R, but it is commonly known as PIME: planning, implementation, monitoring and evaluation, or review. Okay, so you can use it. So planning is looking ahead, implementation is working on the plan, monitoring is looking at what has been achieved so far, and evaluation is understanding what is the difference. And then we go back to the starting point. Okay, and we say, have we achieved what we are looking at it? What has been the impact? And then we go on to a second phase of the project. Okay, so I think I've completed more or less whatever I wanted to plan and whatever I was looking at. Let me go back to some of the points. There were some points that I've covered, but probably I did not give you the theory part of it. The theory part of it is basically when you're looking at an approach to a management project, you're looking at a traditional project. A traditional project is what we are looking at just now. It is known as a traditional project management. So when you're looking at management project management, your traditional approach is looking at planning, implementing, monitoring and closing. Okay, like you can see on your screen here, you have probably done so much of projects. Probably you have done a couple of projects, each one of you. So the traditional understanding is very clearly is initiation, planning, execution or implementation, monitoring and then evaluating it, and then closing the project. Okay, so that is the normal traditional understanding. Okay, then the next understanding of a project, when we're saying a project, we are looking at sometimes we could look at a project that is flexible. A word that is used in management terminology, it's called agile project. Agile means which is very flexible, which is very can change. um, like for example, when we're looking at timelines. So now suppose if you're looking at a deliverable timeline, now this can happen in many CSR projects. Now your manager will tell you, see, we have to deliver this in the set number of so many months. There has to be a change in the lives of the farmers. Now I'll tell you a very simple thing is, what is a traditional timeline? Traditional timeline tells you, say, 3 years, but you can say that I have achieved a buy-in of the farmers within 6 months. So maybe then you can change the project. For example, you were able to help the farmers change from chemical to organic. Okay, so that is called a agile project. Okay, uh, you know so there are different frameworks within the agile project, which is a framework which is used in many management circles. I won't go into those details, not necessary, but I'll go to another third approach which we are looking at, is a waterfall approach. Now this waterfall approach, I'll tell you a very easy way to understand it. a waterfall approach is a very silly example which I'm giving you. Is like, suppose if you're doing your makeup, you go from first, since most of you are women, will understand this example very easily. So suppose if you are, doing a makeup, you would first start with certain steps. You put a foundation, for example, you put a blush and a mascara, and these are all the different beauty things that you would do in order to make up your face, look beautiful. Okay, but once you have put the, for example, once you have put the mascara, that is, the eyelining and all, then you cannot go back to the previous step and say, I'll put the foundation. Foundation is what you put as a kind of, that you look a little bit, brighter on your face. Now you cannot change the steps. So that is called a waterfall approach, as in step by step. Now in computer projects or in technological projects, you have a step by step. Another example is, suppose if you say a computer, you have in computers, you have you write a program. Like in the program, you have step 1, step 2, you have to write an entire steps in a computer program. So similarly, when you're looking at project management, you're looking at certain steps. Okay, so that could be another thing, that when you're looking at a project management, when applied to the social work sector, you're looking at, you need to do a needs assessment. You need to understand the customer. So if you have not understood the customer, your project is destined for failure, because you have not understood the need of the community. You have not understood the need of your customer. So how can profits come in if you have not understood the customer? Okay, so that is the waterfall approach. Then there is a systems approach. Now the systems approach is understanding the loop. There is a feedback loop. That means your project begins and ends, like, how you understand the loop, as in, there is a cycle. Okay, so what is that cycle that you're following? You need to review the project in that cycle. So have you been able to understand what are the factors that contribute to your project? What are the factors that contribute to the sustaining of your project? What are the risks involved in your project? So you will be looking at the entire project in a framework, and we will do this systems approach very clearly when we're looking at log frame analysis. Okay, you will understand the systems approach when we are looking at the monitoring of the project through a log frame. Okay, and the next final one is a program management approach. Okay, the program management approach is saying that what is the change that I want to bring about in the whole process. Okay, now whenever we're looking at what is the problem that we are addressing and what is the change. So even in businesses, you are looking at, if you are introducing a product or a service, you're looking at a change that you're bringing about through the introduction of that product or the service. Okay, so in social work, when we're looking at, say, like this livelihood project, now what is the change that we're looking at in this with the farmers? We are looking at bringing about a change from organic farming, from chemical farming to organic farming. We are looking at increasing the production. Okay, so all this can be a very clear approach. So that is a program management approach. And I think finally, that is what I would like to end the class, this section, because there are lots more questions which you will have, and they will emerge as we go through the next module in the second, that is the next Sunday, where we will clearly address those things. So let me go back again to the first slide, which I gave you an outline of what I'm trying to cover. Okay, so when we are looking at project management, I have told you the meaning of project management, what are the key domains in terms of people's processes and the environment. We are looking at the project cycle in terms of the start to the end, conceptualizing, planning, organizing, implementing, okay, and delivering the whole process. Okay, so we did it in a very in a way in which we took an example, so that would be able to, and at every phase I was trying to bring in the corporate perspective, so that you would, since we're with CSR, we need to have a clear management perspective when we're dealing with projects. Okay, so thank you for listening, and I think I'm just on time, if I'm not mistaken. 1 minute more to end the class. There would be certain areas that may have missed out, but we have the remaining 3 classes to cover, 3 modules to cover. And if there are any more questions that you need to, I will answer them you can go ahead, unmute yourself, and I will answer. I will also share with you an article, okay, which will talk about the project management approach, and very specifically, it will discuss this cycle which I'm talking about. Okay, this cycle is which is on your screen, the project management life cycle. Okay, I will share you this information in an article, which is printed, which is a PDF document straight from a book. Okay, so thank you for listening. Any questions?
No,
Hello?
sir. No, sir.
Yeah, no, not yet. Yeah, please. I know there would be a lot of
So,
gaps in your. Yes, tell
so
me.
I just wanted to know, you showed us the different types of, project management types, right? The waterfall, agile.
Yes, yes.
So how one
Yes, yes.
should how one should know that this is the type of project management we should implement in our project?
See, basically, when you're looking at project management, you're looking at an efficient and effective way of managing your project. Okay, using resources within a time frame and the scope of your project. So what would be best would be coming up with a log frame, which I'm going to teach you when I'm going to do a proposal. Okay. See, what happens is in that you will understand the whole process, because I'll be talking to you about very clearly. See, now I'm not talking to you about it because then I would overstep it, and then you will, you would see, I'll come back to the cycle. So what happens is when you plan, you're putting, and what happens when you implement. So when you're looking at the approach, now say, suppose if you're looking at an agile approach, what is agile approach? Your ability to be flexible. So where are you flexible? When you have made your plan, okay, you have come up with a project framework. Okay, they call it a project framework of a frame uh, project log frame approach, PLA. Okay, I will show you that log frame. So when you're looking at it, you're coming up with a plan, and then you begin to implement it. In the process of implementing, you're monitoring it, and this is the agile approach. In the agile approach is that when you're monitoring it, you come across a certain conflict situation. How are you going to handle that? That will be the agile approach. Are you able to tweak your project? In a very clear traditional approach agencies had was you need to stick with your project framework. That means if you had a project, that project had to be blindly followed right up to the end. Like many government projects, you notice, I'm sorry to say, like some of the government projects, that were implemented by the government was a very traditional approach. That means to say that was the project goals. Okay, so suppose if a road, I'll give you an example. Suppose if a road had to be built, of a particular length of so many kilometers. Read the book by P. Sayanath, Everyone Loves a Good Route. Okay, then you will understand the traditional approach. The traditional approach will tell you exactly that if a road had to be built, it had to be built, and it did, and it, of course, with all the government flaws of corruption, that road did not get built. Why? Because of course, certain flaws. But of course, it was following the traditional approach by saying that it had to be built only according to these many kilometers. Okay, there was no needs assessment done. There was no tweaking of the project as per the need. Now, when the plan was laid up, it was said it was. But in the midst of 20 kilometers, that road could have diverted at 10 kilometers and covered 25 hamlets of the tribal belt, and then could have been tweaked again. And that way, in that, what happens is that road could have been built in a very efficient and effective manner, thereby reaching the maximum number of population. You got it? So that could have happened only in the agile approach. Okay, but in the government approach of a very strict traditional approach, it would have gone from planning to implementing, and directly it would have closed the project. And that is what happens. Okay, not only government, many big funding agencies also have done this error. I'm not only saying government, many big funding agencies. Okay, so that is what happens. Yeah. So that is one example. Yeah. Priyanka, I hope I have answered your question.
Yes, sir.
Hello.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah. So we, as we go along, look concretely also. Yeah. So please look at a lot of, sometimes it is good to learn from failure projects also. Why did IRDP project of the government fail? Integrated Rural Development project of the government fail. Why did it fail? Look at the evaluation reports. Look at how the mess it made. Okay, it was a very beautifully planned project. Now, if you say it was a project cycle approach, perfectly planned. Where did it fail? Some things to think about and learn as social, practitioners. Yeah. Okay. Thank you for listening, and I'm sure we will go ahead and we will learn a lot more. Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah. So have a nice Sunday, all of you, and let me go back to the screen. I think Nilima ma'am is